Thanks for joining. We already got into it before you even joined. We're having a spirited debate. Spirited, but respectful, with love.
Yes.
I think Dany and I both agree that we agree with the military action against Iran. I know a lot of you probably don't, but my feeling on this is there would have been a time. It was inevitable that a U.S. president would have to take military action against Iran. And I think Donald Trump is the president that had the cojones and the fortitude to do it. We'll talk more in this session, and we're going to focus on Iran today and all the accoutrement around that. But about the way it's done, and we don't love all of the execution and everything about it, but there would have been a time that some U.S. president would have had to do it. So I don't have a problem that we're going against Iran. But what I said to Dany is, my brother said I go like this a lot, and it's very rude. Let me know what you guys think.
I don't think it's rude. It doesn't bother me
Because
at all.
I go like this, and some people, I was in a job interview one time, and I was like this, and the guy goes like this. Anyway, I can be a lot. Anyway.
No,
I know.
what?
But I was at an iftar last night for the Embassy of Bahrain held a interfaith iftar, and all the Gulf states were there last night, and they were all shell-shocked. They didn't even want to be there, but they came to support their GCC brother, if you will. But they were all kind of like, we've seen what's happening in the region. Iran is not only retaliating against U.S. bases in the region, but also civilian targets around the region. I thought, everything we're hearing about the imminent threat, they could have waited 2 weeks to let the region finish Ramadan and, not have all of this during what is supposed to be a month of, peaceful celebration. What say you?
I mean, tough luck that it's Ramadan. That's not our issue. I wish all my Muslim friends Ramadan Mubarak, but for most of my Muslim friends in the region, this is the answer to their prayers for the last 47 years, which is the end to the Islamic Republic of Iran. So,
nobody's crying for any.
You just wanted to wait 2 weeks so that all your cards would get there on time?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't care. I think those sorts of niceties, this is like the debate that we had in the Bush administration about whether the president could talk about jihadis. And some people say that jihad is just a personal self-exploration. And the answer is,
who the fuck said?
what?
Oh, sorry. Who said that?
Oh, are you kidding me? Go back and look at the debates.
It's a personal self-exploration.
Haven't you seen that? Oh my God, it's so awful. I'll send it to you because I've seen in the show notes because I've actually seen it recently again. And look, we're something between Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Hindus. Let me tell you, every day is a holiday, and you got to do what you got to do. I am with you on the idea that there was some imminence to this, not because I'm critical of the action, because I'm not, but because basically this has become one of those. Yes, Henry, we know.
We already
mentioned Yom Kippur,
and I thought it was rude at the time, although I was 3 years old. But anyway.
I wasn't, but yes, yes, rude. That was the prime problem with the Yom Kippur War.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do, but look, at the end of the day, this action would have needed to happen. And part of the debate that we're watching, that you and I are going to talk about, the part of the political debate is literally objection A, objection B, objection C. And part of the defensive argument is defense A, defense B, and defense C. And, there is a staleness to those discussions. One of them, was it imminent? It wasn't imminent. Is this a war of preemption? Is this a war of choice? Is this
Is
a
it a
war of this?
war?
So, and the answer is A. You heard it here first. This is a war. This was a war of preemption, but not for an action that was going to take place tomorrow. It was not imminent in the next 24 hours. That is irrelevant. You go to war at a time of your choosing, not a time dictated by the enemy, right? This is not how it works. And all of the other debates that we're going to talk about, again, are debates that we have again and again and again. And the only hypocrisy here is when it's a Republican in the White House, the Democrats say it. And when it's a Democrat in the White House, the Republicans say it. And from my standpoint, they're all hypocrites. One of the things I love about us, you and me, not anybody else,
One
is
of the many things.
one of the many, many things is that we say the same thing. Look,
But we can see both. There was this episode of I'm watching the show Industry, which is a really good show for
oh, is
anybody
it
that
good?
it's fantastic. But the episode was called Both And because there are so many hypocrisies and people want to stick to their own hypocrisy and not recognize the other hypocrisy. But both things can be true.
Right.
Okay.
So let me lay an example out that I particularly like, where Republicans were up in arms. The United States joined military action in Libya to overthrow the Gaddafi regime. For those of you who don't pay
And didn't
obsessed,
but didn't say it at the time. They said that they were there to like to protect the responsibility to protect hundreds of thousands of civilians or 100,000 civilians from getting slaughtered in this potential action. They didn't say regime change.
and yet it was regime change.
Right.
Right. If anybody, certainly Muammar Gaddafi, wherever he is today, would agree with me since he ended his days shot and in the back of a truck, and I suspect probably dismembered as well, because he was not a popular guy. The Obama administration went in. The Republicans jumped up and down, talked about war powers, talked about illegality, talked about the lack of consultation with Congress, talked about there was no plan. There's no plan. There's no plan. What are you going to do afterwards? And the answer from the Obama administration was drop dead. Drop dead, you Republicans. And then, of course, we had the murder of our ambassador, Chris Stevens, and Republicans, launched into investigations because everybody knows shit doesn't happen during wartime, and now that playbook, that extraordinarily unoriginal playbook, is being used by the Democrats on Iran. And you know what? There's a certain sort of, let me know when you're done with that element.
Yeah. I mean, the Republicans are falling over themselves to say this isn't war, even though President Trump has said it's a war. It's a war, okay? This is not like a little baby military action. But their Democrats are falling over themselves to say, nobody is crying for a supreme leader. He was a horrible guy. I'm glad he's dead.
But
Both and
yeah,
this is a war. And, now we'll talk about, you wrote this great piece. I don't know if it was yesterday or this morning, but I think it was yesterday. I didn't have a chance to read it, but it's a great piece
how do you know it was a great
about,
piece then, other than that I wrote it?
no, because I did read it
Oh, okay.
this morning. About, look, no one's well, there are people questioning it, but nobody that supports military action with Iran is mad at you because of the military action. The lack of planning involved
Yeah.
and the lack of a plan for the day after, even if it just seems like it's like, kind of characteristic with this administration of let's do it, we have a good reasoning, let's go. And I'm just concerned that this was not thought out. Not sure that we've learned lessons from previous Libya, Iraq, other type of other military action. And definitely there's no, and I do think the timing, that's why I question the timing and whether it had to go now. I think that getting a coalition together, and I know you have some strong feelings about that, but getting a coalition together, thinking about the day after, maybe I saw that there's going to start to arm the Kurds, maybe some of that stuff before. And this could have just been like, yeah, we're ready to go. We're getting rid of this regime. And there would have been like, I don't know, working groups. I'm kidding. But just a little bit more
commission.
A little bit more forward planning to ensure success, to set yourself up for success.
So first of all, I want to say a few things about this. And thank you for saying nice things. I've got 2 pieces out on Iran, and Elise also has a piece out on Iran. One of them, 2 pieces out. We've both been very productive. My first one is about war powers, and my second
which
one
they're
is,
voting on tomorrow.
Today, maybe even
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And let's talk about that in a sec. But let's talk about planning. We don't know what planning they've been doing. That's number one, because we don't know what they've been doing. That's important. But we do know this administration, and they're not big micromanagers of the
Process.
Of the process, especially afterwards. So I think it's a reasonable supposition that there isn't a very firm plan. However, let me just say that in years past, when we have had a plan,
it's a good point.
I have spent a lot of time on this because, as Elise knows, and some of our listeners know, I was very deeply involved, not just in the Iraq War, but in the run up to the Iraq War. And to say there was no plan for that is wrong. There were 9,000 plans for that. We ourselves published a book full of plans. Here's what you do with the Constitution. Here's what you do with the electoral rules. Here's how you divide up the country into a federal state. Here's what you do about this. Here's what you do about that. And the bottom line is, I would love to tell you, because this is the nerd world I'm in. I'm at a think tank, for heaven's sakes. I would love to tell you that every really well thought out and excellent plan is actually something that lands on the ground and is then faithfully executed and then works. And the answer is none of the above happens, because the second that you meet reality, you take it off the paper and you meet reality, it doesn't work. And I can promise you something else, and Elise knows some of this at least, that in countries like Iraq, in countries like Afghanistan, but I would go further and say in Germany after World War II, right? Nothing ever goes the way you want it to, and
That's
people
fair.
are
I'll give you that.
always mad. One of my favorite articles. I always cite it, so if you folks have heard me cite this before, forgive me. I am in my anecdotage. In 1946, was a cover story from Life magazine, written by the very famous author John Dos Passos, about how we were screwing up Germany and we were screwing up the post-war and how terribly we were doing and what bad decisions we were making. And to me, it was so reminiscent of everything that gets said every single time, because there's always someone unhappy and they're always going to find a journalist. Now, I do want to go on to, and Elise, interrupt me if I'm going on too long, but I want to talk about one of the reasons why for the piece I released this morning on our What the Hell is Going On Substack, the reasons that I articulated were not sort of this nerdy State Department think tank, we need a plan, but based on our conversation with your friend Elise and mine, David Albright, who is a physicist, who is
the expert on Iran nuclear.
Really the expert, and the founder of the Institute for Science and International Security Studies. I never get the name of that damn place right, but it's something like that. Anyway, We had David on the podcast, and he was outstanding. Asked him a whole bunch of really hard questions that I think you all would appreciate about the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Asked him about Iraq war analogies. But what I want to cite here in our conversation is what he said about what's on the ground. So inside Iran, there are not just potentially hundreds of kilograms worth of hidden enriched fissile material, enriched uranium, but also advanced centrifuges, also plans, also the kind of thing that you have to be a physicist to know about, giant furnace that
So the
is
ingredients to make a nuclear weapon,
right,
basically.
that is used for shaping nuclear weapons, plus the science, the documentation,
And the
and
scientists.
and what you don't want is a few different things. Number one, you don't want regime remnants to take this stuff. Number two, you don't want scientists to start selling themselves to the highest bidder. Number three, you don't want people rummaging around and selling the materiel to the highest bidder. This is what we worried about in post-Soviet Ukraine, for example. And the last thing you don't want, and this is something people don't think about because we don't talk about these guys often enough, but does anybody know where Saif al-Adel, first of all, does anybody know who Saif al-Adel is? He's the current head of Al-Qaeda. Do you know where he lives?
Tehran?
You got it, and has for several
Interesting.
years.
Interesting.
And we do not want those guys seeing an opportunity for themselves either. And so even if you don't care about governance, even if you aren't a Danny Pletka neocon who cares about what kind of elections you have and what the governor looks like and all the rest of that, you still need to care about having a stable power in charge after we're done bombing because of all these risks. Go and read the whole piece. He lays it out beautifully. I have a nice
In the
transcript.
show notes.
I'll put it in the show
Okay,
notes.
I'm going to make a little buzzer that I can play that says that. I keep saying that.
Yes.
Okay, a couple of things here. I agree with that.
Yeah.
You did write in this piece, though, Danny's not a fan of the Colin Powell Pottery Barn rule. You break it, you bought it. It's not about, we have a responsibility because, the US did that. However, President Trump and Netanyahu have gone and encouraged the people to go out in the streets, take your government. We've, laid the groundwork for you. These guys don't, just because there's military action and they've destroyed some stuff and killed some people doesn't mean that the Iranian security architecture has been decimated. These people don't have arms. They don't have the capacity really to go against the government any more than they did before. And so I do think, if you're going to encourage people to do that, you do own it a little bit. You can't just, and I think a lot of people,
You mean the way we own the real life?
I let you go on incessantly. It's my turn. I think a lot of people do feel that there is, and including Mike McCall, who was just, okay, he's not conservative enough for you. Anyway.
Mike McCall?
Yeah.
We're citing the former chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee now?
Well, he was just on TV 5 minutes ago.
Well, I don't have TV, so there
he
you
was
go.
saying that, he did cite, break it, bought it, whatever. But all I'm saying is, I think there are a lot of people that are afraid that, I think the Israelis are more focused on leadership change, whereas maybe the US is more focused on getting rid of the missile launchers, getting rid of the missiles, getting rid of the nukes. But the Israelis are very focused on leadership change. But if you're not going to be involved in the change in helping midwife the change of leadership, then how do you know it's going to, as you said before, it never plans out the way you want it to? How do you not get perhaps something worse? How do you not perhaps, get some IRGC guys that are even more, focused? And then there is, again, this concern, and President Trump has pretty much said to this effect, he'd love to find an IRGC guy he could deal with, but they're all dead. He did say that.
He didn't say IRGC.
he was saying something to the effect. And so that's that. And then another thing that we can talk about is, but it's not on topic, but I want to just throw it out there. There was always this concern that Iran was trying to create this Shia crescent in the region. And now you see a lot of the people that are, starting, riots along in the region are part of this Shia. You've even seen it in Pakistan. You've seen it in Bahrain. I'm wondering, what you think about that. So let's go to the idea that, regime change is great, but if you're not involved in the establishment of a new regime, you leave yourself out, and you really break it. You've bought it.
Okay, so I don't think you break it. You bought it, but I take your point, and I agree with most of it. But Donald Trump doesn't sign up to that, and look,
it can't be yada yada yada. Whatever happens, happens.
Want me to answer?
Yes.
Thank you. So I generally believe that outcomes are better when we are pushing a particular candidate. And I will say for exactly the reasons you lay out and more. First of all, not all options are great. Not every successor government to the Islamic Republic is going to be better than the Islamic Republic. And we do not want to have engaged in this military exercise in order to have Islamic Republic Mark II, the sequel, right? So what you say there, I think, is completely correct. In the Dany Pletka is King of the World school of governance, we pick winners. I'm a big believer in picking winners. Why? Because I like our values. I like Western values. I like standing up for women's rights, for religious freedom, minority rights, for democratic governance, for free markets, for accountability, for a free press, for civil government. I like all of those things. But I will say that when we tried to do that in Iraq, everybody said, you're just trying to elect a bunch of Western puppets. These aren't authentic people. These aren't real people. These aren't who the Iraqi people chose. And my attitude is, that's tough shit. We helped get rid of your bad government, and now we're going to help choose the successor, and then you're going to have an election and you choose whoever you want. That's not how it's going to go this time, for the very simple reason that Donald Trump is not a neoconservative, and Donald Trump is not going to be choosing. What he wants to put in place is an uprising that chooses a successor leader. Will that work? I can't tell you it's going to work because I don't know. I hope it's going to work. There's a reason I'm a neoconservative. There's a reason I believe we should do the picking and choosing. There's a reason I believe that we ought to care about it, which I laid out when I was speaking incessantly per Elise before. And so, these are the factors. But
that doesn't mean, though, that you can't give them the tools that they need. And again, we said we don't know what's going. We don't know. We said we don't know what's going on in the planning or whatever. But I have to hope that discussions are, that people are reaching out through third-party mediators or whatever to members of the opposition to possibly help find some breaks in the, regime that, or even in the military or whatever, that weren't so thrilled with what happened in January and might be able to. I just hope there are efforts going on and we're not like, all right, well, bomb.
I know.
See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.
I know there are efforts going on. And I want everybody to understand there are a lot of creeps who want to rule Iran. So one example, the Mujahideen Khalq is probably the best known. This is called, in America, it's referred to by two names: the National Council of Resistance in Iran and the MEK, the Mujahideen.
MEK, yeah, that's the most popular.
MEK has, from sources that are still unclear to me 30 years later, still has a vast sum of money, and they buy and sell American politicians. So Michael Mukasey, Howard Dean, if anybody remembers that screamer, very bipartisan. John Bolton has spoken for them. Former governors, former members of Congress.
Former cabinet members, yeah.
They pay a ton of money. We're not talking about, hey, pay me 10K for a speech, 50,000, 100,000 for these kind of formers to come and speak at their gatherings. You heard it here first, guys. This is a cult. Okay. This is a Marxist Islamist. So it's like the worst of everything. Marxist Islamist cult that wants to take over Iran. And they are not an option. And I hope none of those guys, Jim Jones was another one of them, former national security advisor to Obama.
I could see this administration being like, oh, these guys could work.
I don't think that would last too long, and I'll tell you why. Because the intelligence community and the FBI hate them. They were on the terrorism list.
Who took them off the terror list?
Hillary Clinton. She was sued. It was actually the MEK versus Hillary Clinton.
Oh, that's right.
A bill in 1996 gave terrorist organizations a right of legal action against the Secretary of State to sue him or her when they were listed as a terrorist organization. And so they did, and they got delisted. Hillary was very against it, and she was against it for the same reason that I am. I've known those guys forever. I mean, you can't get married without the head of this cult's permission. They take your children away from you when they're born. I mean, it makes Scientology look like mainstream Christianity. That's how weird these people are. Bad news. And there are other bad news guys as well, inside Iran, because that's always the case. So, look, I'm with you, Elise. We want something good to follow this. We certainly, our lowest standard is we want something not worse, right?
Right. You said something, and I agree with you in a sense, that this is a, for the region, this is what I'm working on right now, that, after October 7th, Israel really reshaped the geopolitical landscape and the battlefield by going after the proxies, going after Iran, the June 12th. I mean, they really reshaped the landscape. But, the work is unfinished. And I don't just think, toppling this regime. I wrote this piece that, like, this is not the Wizard of Oz. This is not like a ding dong, the witch is dead moment where we all dance a jig and like join hands.
I'm dancing.
Okay. Dong's not finished yet, right? No one's going back to Kansas just yet. And, Lindsey Graham was on Meet the Press the other day, a very strong proponent of military action. And he was like, this is it. This is, it is going to change the region. But, I think, the work is not finished. And I do think that President Trump has a real opportunity here to bring and it's going to require the kind of unglamorous political will and, hand-holding that he's not, want to do, to bring the region together and kind of heal old wounds and bring Israel closer to Saudi Arabia and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada.
And yada, yada, yada. That's right. Now, listen, in an ideal world, people behave well. In an ideal world, foreigners make good decisions. In an ideal world, we help them make good decisions and provide correct incentive structures. This is the dream. You know what, though, Elise? I'll tell you, I'm ready for Iran to become even a boring, shitty country, even a country that doesn't, in a lot of ways, like Iraq, and I love Iraq. I love my friends in Iraq. I love how they've transformed the country. And for those of you who don't believe me, I think I wrote about this last time I came back. But is it a good democracy? No, it's not. It's a democracy, but it's not a perfect democracy. But if we get rid of this government in Iran, we have truly, when we talk about the devil on your shoulder, that's telling you to do bad things, Iran is the devil in the Middle East. Are there others? You bet. Erdogan is waiting in the wings to take their place. But just think about Assad. Think about 500,000 Syrians murdered at the hands of the Assad regime with the help of the Iranians. Think about Hezbollah and how they have terrorized Lebanon, not just Israel, Lebanon, how they have destroyed that country, destroyed it, right? Think about Hamas, think about Palestinian Islamic Jihad, think about what the Houthis have done to Yemen. Think about what the Houthis have done to Saudi Arabia. Think about the attacks by the Houthis and the Iranians together on our friends in the United Arab Emirates. Think about what the Iranians are doing in sub-Saharan Africa. Think about the fact that the head of Al-Qaeda lives in Tehran. Think about what Iran has done to Afghanistan. When you
as
take
Graham
that
said, the
away,
mothership of terrorism is sinking.
It is. And you know what? You're right that there are bad things that could come of this, but they will have to work very hard to be as bad as this regime.
Oh, I definitely agree. I just think all the problems of the region aren't going to be settled
Of course not. You're right.
by
You're right.
this.
Want to
And
talk quickly about war powers?
yeah, my feeling, and you have know more about this than me. My feeling on I'm less concerned about the authorization itself and more concerned about the lack of kind of, discussion, buy-in, and consultation that, this administration does. And they did it with everything in Venezuela. And I wanted to talk more about I'm, just sitting around and all of a sudden I see last night we bombed Ecuador. I mean, they're just it's just everywhere. They think they can do whatever they want, and there's no oversight. There's no oversight. And so I'm not saying that he shouldn't be able to do it. I'm just saying I believe in executive power to a point. And so I'm less concerned about the authorization and more concerned about the attitude that I'm doing what I want and, piss off.
I think our listeners know that you and I generally agree that Congress isn't doing its job.
Right.
And I think that is a bipartisan problem, and I think it
I
is
agree.
a bipartisan White House problem. Obama didn't share the Iran nuclear agreement with Congress. Obama wouldn't share.
This is kind of taking it to a next level, though, Dany.
Remember when you said I knew more about this?
You know more about war powers.
I
and
also
the
know more
legality of
about
it.
what gets shared by the White House with Congress. When they went into Libya, they did the exact same 48-hour Gang of Eight. I always call them the Gang of Eight, and they're the Group of Eight. It's something communist in me.
Everybody calls it the
Notification.
Gang of Eight.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the leadership, the House and Senate leadership, the Intel Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committees. So the White House is pretty good generally about making that phone call. The Obama White House did that on Libya. The Trump White House did that on Libya. They did that on the Caribbean. They did that on Venezuela as well. It's the follow-up. And there I would say that is not on Trump. That is on every single damn White House this century. And when I say this century, listen to me, you will not believe this because every single president, and by the way, Bill Clinton, when I was on Capitol Hill and we would get those calls, wasn't freaking telling us what they were doing militarily. Oh, we joined this peacekeeping accord. This is how Black Hawk Down happened in Somalia. And so that's my complaint about the White House. It is totally spot on. It has no relationship to Trump or Iran. It relates to this broader problem that you and I agree about and the lack of oversight. The whining about constitutionality is just bullshit, if you will forgive me.
I mean, it's pretty clear it's in today's day and age that the Constitution doesn't apply to the president. It doesn't.
Well, the Constitution on this question. Let's not go
Okay.
further
Okay.
afield.
But
But
it was the same with all the Venezuela stuff. We're at war with terrorist organizations. Okay, well, could you lay out some evidence? I mean, everyone knows Maduro is bad. Everyone knows that drugs are coming in from there, but can you show a little leg on this issue?
I agree about the leg, but I also want to underscore something really, really important that the courts very often say to both Democrats and Republicans. And that is, you don't like this, Congress? Don't come to me. You have the power to do something about this. And the answer is, you are complaining and coming to the courts because you don't have the votes to do what you want. And that is the issue here. Congress has not been able to stop any military operation or, by the way, get any military operations started, despite the fact that Congress controls the money. Why? Because, and this is really where, I don't know, I actually don't know whether you agree or not, but this is something I teach in my class at Georgetown to my students when I talk about Congress and the Middle East. Secretly, they don't want to.
they don't want to.
Right.
They don't want
They
to.
want to complain, but they don't want the responsibility.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
the best
That's right.
example of that, I put the example in my piece, but are you writing, by the way? Because I can hear scratch, scratch, scratch.
I'm writing show notes.
No, they're always show notes, the plague of our show. So the reason they don't want to is because those votes have consequences. Everything goes great in Iran, and you voted against it. It's going to be in every commercial against you, right? Everything goes terribly, and you
voted
for it.
for it.
Every commercial will be against you.
Yeah.
Why do that when your option is to just get on TV and bitch and moan? And I go through all the examples of this, and there are lots of important ones with Hillary Clinton, with Obama, with Joe Biden, with Bill Clinton, that will interest you in the Substack that we'll post on the show notes.
Okay. Well, look, this was great. And, obviously there are a lot of developments. It's very fluid. We wanted to come kind of a little bit earlier. We'll see where things are in a couple of days if our schedules allow. And there are a lot of developments. Maybe on Friday
Friday, I'm not doing probably not doing nothing, but we might be able to do tomorrow at our usual time.
Okay.
We might be able to, because I just canceled something. So, maybe we'll have something to talk about. God knows.
Okay. Send us your questions, send us your thoughts, comments. We'll post this with the show notes.
We'll post this with the show notes later
Send
this
us your
afternoon.
thoughts, and we look forward to keeping in touch. I continue to talk to everybody in the chat. Dany could chime in. Dany has her chat in What the Hell is Going On. I don't know if you use your chat.
I don't, actually.
Use my chat.
I will use your chat.
Okay. All right, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.